Hello and welcome to a new video. In this video, I made this diorama piece. Why I made it and how I made it, let me take you through it. While I was working on my earthquake fundraise diorama build, I was commissioned by a friend to make a similar creation for him to have a somewhat of a memorabilia, so he could always remember the tragedy and the human cost of what had happened. Now, you would question whether wanting to be reminded of such an event or not, he gave me the job and I made it. This was one of the two ideas I had in mind to make for the fundraising video, but instead I chose the other one. And didn't want the spare idea to go to waste, so I decided to use it for my commissioner. And to be fair, you can come up with so few ideas when it comes to represent actual death and destruction took place in real life not too long ago. So for the build, I made some concrete pillars from wall plaster and added twisted armature wire in them to represent construction iron. This is the first time I poured the mixture in a mold. Sadly, these boxes are cardstock and they bent a bit. No big deal since I'm gonna tear and break these. Next, I started to work on the base and build the actual collapsed structure with the styrofoam parts left over from the previous work and the pillars I made. Since I never get to manage the plaster-water ratio, I could easily slice and break the pillars. They were still somewhat crumbly, which worked out perfectly for me. I find it harder to make a destroyed building compared to making a standing one. At this stage, I was trying to a bit think like an engineer to make sure where a wall section and ceiling section would be. It's not like just to glue the pieces randomly here and there. Even though it's hard to tell what is what from a collapsed building, I still wanted to make it look like it was a building before. I picked up leftover wooden pieces and sticks to add lumber debris scattered around. Originally, I planned to make broken and destroyed furniture pieces, but later I decided that those would be lost in the mess I was trying to illustrate here. With the help of diluted PVA glue, I covered the bald spots with rocks, pebbles, crumbles, and baking soda to create extra texture for the paint later on. For the paint job, I started with watered down lighter gray to darker gray to cover the entire thing. Painted the individual sections, bigger rocks and such in lighter gray tones. Painting took longer than the actual build, since I used watered down paints and there were a lot of glue usage. It took a long amount of time in between each coat of paint. Once I was done with the actual grayish tones, I started painting the details. Here, I wanted to use as contrast colors as I could. As of today, there are 30 votes in my latest poll post in my channel. The results are almost identical. If you haven't voted yet, make my job easier and go there to vote for your favorite idea for me to build. Otherwise, I'll have to build all of them. Let me give you a tip if you're painting with acrylics. If you're dripping your paints in the same pan or cap, water them down there and make sure to mix the new paint with the previous paint every once in a while. You'll end up with having different tones of the similar colors and save up from using new paint every time. Also, I usually use the final mixture to apply as a final filter. This binds all the different colors together. In this case, my final result was a heavily watered down, lightly grayish red color which I used as a filter, covering the entire diorama. After the overall paint job, I dry brushed the edges of bigger concrete pieces with white. Then painted the woods with 3 different wooden colors. Before I was done, I applied rust, black and mud green color weathering pigments to add depth in certain parts and extra dirt all over. and sealed it with isopropyl alcohol as usual. For this build I wanted to have a pair of figures, and as accessories I made a compressor unit with a jackhammer attached to it, a rope, a pickaxe and a sledgehammer. Starting with the compressor, there's not much to it really. I looked at a couple of pictures and decided to replicate where I could and improvise where I couldn't. For the sake of realism, I would have to make an excavator or something like that working next to the rubble, but A, that would take a lot of space on the diorama base, and B, I wanted to focus more on the human side and wanted the eyes to focus more on the figures. Just like the last build, I used a pair of World War II British Infantry figures, this time into a pair of miners. But I also wanted to give them angelic wings. Of all the professions, I have one of the most respect to miners. It's been arguably one of the toughest and dangerous jobs while being the one paying lowest throughout human history. Sadly, growing up I regularly kept hearing the news of earthquakes, mine collapses, forest fires, wildfires, floods and so on. Every time I'd see miners being one of the first responders to these events, working hard and diligently to rescue as many people as they can from the given disaster for days and nights. They always have the threat of becoming victim themselves. Maybe that kind of empathy pushes them toward responding disasters as willingly and rapidly as they do. Therefore, I gave these two the wings I believe they deserve. I first planned to paint the compressor unit in yellow, but then I thought that yellow would be mixed in with the grayish background color of the collapsed building, so I picked up Vallejo's amaranth red and painted with that as the main color. I intentionally kept the bars around it in yellow, again to make it bring out the unit a bit more from the background. For the figures, I decided to paint their uniform in amaranth red, then applied watered down Vallejo dark red color. For their vests, I originally planned to paint in green, but then changed my mind to yellow for no real reason. In order to make this build a little bit more interesting, I painted the wings with glow-in-dark paint. And later applied a bit of a dark wash into the crevices of the wings. Finally, applied weathering powders to both figures and the compressor unit to make them look dirty, worn and used. So, to complete this, I made a small box for the diorama to be placed in. I think the owner of this piece will get a display case made for it, so I made sure the diorama sits right in the middle of this. I painted in black and applied 2 coats of acrylic varnish off the camera. I wanted this to have a name tag, so I printed the earthquake coordinates, the date and the time it happened. Made a panel out of cardboard so the name tag would stand out a bit from the rest of the frame. Once every piece dried and ready, I placed them on the diorama before I was done with this. Thank you for being here and watching this episode. Don't forget to go to my channel in the community section and vote for a theme if you haven't yet. See you in the next one. Bye bye.